The resettlement of all those from Operation Exodus was going well, really well, better than could be expected, actually, as every single one of the enhanced species are taking to their new homes very, very well. Of course, they are modifying their prefabricated homes a little bit. That is, adjustments in height. Some of them had to be moved to different locations, and of course, the amenities, because not all of them can sit on a human toilet, of course. And then again, some of them don't need a shower. Along with that, other changes like inside the kitchen, living room, or what have you, was not too extravagant, but it was enough that you could tell where each of their specific species was originally from. Once they settled in, they started farming, mining, manufacturing, and with the increased tech that was being used from the humans, in particular the AI, they were able to start creating their own vehicles and their own vessels within the first year. Because of this, they also started making trades on and off planet, trading for mainly what they wanted for an excess of what they had. Of course, the good old fashioned barter system was in effect, and everyone knew that this wasn't always the best option, but it was better than nothing for sure. The grandparents liked to stop by unannounced, and Larry voiced his concern on many occasions. However, he did allow this because his kids rather enjoyed the visits. They also got to learn more about their own history, their own cultures. In this realm, camping trips were very common as they could separate the boys and the girls, and they could talk to each other in ways that are not usually allowed when they're mixed together. This also gave their parents some alone time. Vince and Femcast really enjoyed this because, well, with so many children at home, they needed some time alone to each other. Although, usually the standard joke was, "Did you and your wife have some fun?" "Yeah, I slept for 30 hours straight, man. I don't remember the last time I did that." Of course, both being parents, they both got the idea. Then again, as soon as they asked where the wife was and realized that she had not awoken yet, they both looked at each other, gave each other a fist bump, and then got on with their day. After two full sol rotations, trade with the humans and the Vunshin became common, as their sectors were situated directly in between the two territories. Along with that, the population began to increase. Slowly, of course. But it increased in ones, twos, and threes. But not only just from births that were happening. No. Every once in a while, there would be a single refugee coming in a shuttle, usually much worse for wear, coming from Vunshin territory. On several occasions, was given a Vunshin escort, as the ship they were on just would not make the trip, period. With this, they were set up with their own spot, and everything was good. Everything was very good. At this point, the eldest children were starting to date. This made both Larry and Gregnar a bit apprehensive, as they weren't sure how well their children were going to get along dating someone, looking for prospective mates. However, they let it go as they realized that their own situation was a bit unorthodox compared to what they're used to. They unfortunately had to leave the kids to figure out much of this, although they made sure they understood the implications of certain activities and that they were not going to be tolerated. The kids, not knowing the human joke about it, were kind of surprised when Larry showed up and sat the kids down before they went on their first dates. And he goes, "See this? This is a shotgun. This is what fathers use to protect their daughters. So, John, understand that your girlfriend's father has one of these, and he will use it if you do something stupid. Sherry, if someone does something stupid to you, be assured I will use this one. Am I clear to both of you?" "Yes, sir," they both said, a little timidly, as they don't usually see their father that aggressive or standing that mean or have that straight look of "I'm about to kill a motherfucker" on his face. Aside from that type of talk, they had to have the normal talk, in air quotes, of course. But thankfully, the kids were not stupid. And because of that, They began to look into careers outside farming and ranching. They didn't understand why they had to be on there, dealing with such simple things like raising cattle or things like that, when they could be more focused on the physics and learning different tech or even building new technologies. They didn't understand why they needed both. Well, the parents always said the same thing, and every single parent on that planet said the same thing. It's better that you know it. Just trust me. It's better that you know as much as possible. Because the twins seemed to have more understanding than most, when they started looking into their first enhancements, well, both Larry and Greknar were a bit worried and thought this could be trouble. However, they realized that the kids were not stupid, and they would have to sit down and talk to them more about it as they needed all the information as possible. Gregnar made a point to actually sit them both down and remind them that she had been altered and had to go through many, many, many briefings. And there were many things she thought she could do that she couldn't do, and other things she didn't think were possible that they could do. And all around, all this different technology can do different things. Of course, the side effects she had to tell them about, and of course, how it was done. They both understood, and thankfully took everything to heart. Sherry, being a girl, of course, would be the first one to stop growing, which meant that with development complete, enhancements were possible. No one was allowed to enhance before this point in their life, ever. There were many additional conversations about what they could or should have done to themselves. She was young, healthy, all her parts seemed to work, and she was also, as her father put it, a stunning beauty. With this in mind, she finally took Larry's advice and she fell into the kiss method of doing things. You know, keep it simple, stupid. John was a bit jealous that he had to wait longer, though his girlfriend kept his mind off of it. This was easy to do since she was also an enhanced force and was, well, tall, at least for a human tall. The light, sandy, almost blonde hair that seemed to drape down, along with that very long tail that she used always to seem to tease him. Of course, she got yelled at a few times in the house. Along with extremely deep blue eyes. A deep, almost dark, almost like Greknar's green eyes, just blue instead of green. Also, she was well developed, yet not overly so. You would think that she was already enhanced the way she was. She was close to enhancement age as well, but the question was, would she even bother with it the way she was? John was there to actually help his sister into the enhancement tube. The process is scary, honestly, the first time. As you're getting into it, you think you're being put into a clear coffin or something. And it's even worse if you're claustrophobic. Her boyfriend, a completely human male who, of course, had enhancements, which why I was here, stood just outside in the viewing area. Just looking at him, you could see that he had barely the minimal enhancements, which was pretty much the same thing that Larry had. The only difference is this one was young compared to Larry, at only 123 years old. Though he definitely had to stay out no matter how much he started pushing against the glass. Sherry had taken the advice and only got the basic enhancements, keeping it simple in case she wants to do something else later. She can always add to, but she can't take away. She went straight for the enhanced regeneration and, of course, rejuvenation that all females seem to do first thing. It's almost as though they're scared of getting old or something. Then again, Larry looked at this and he laughed because he could look over at his wife, who looked exactly the same as she did when she came out of the tube the first time. All that being said, it was so common to have these two, it was almost considered strange not to have them. Everyone was nervous as she was taken out of the tank when everything was done about a week later. When she slid out of the tank, everything went by the numbers, clearing her off, making sure her throat was clear so she could breathe, and all the fun stuff that happened with this. Larry and Greknar smiled as they saw their daughter actually wake up a bit early and sighed in relief when she gave them the thumbs up. Along with that, They could see that the doctor gave the thumbs up to the viewing area as well. Gregnar immediately grabbed onto Larry as though she was just trying to relax a little bit, but keeping herself standing as her legs were about to give out. With this, they also had an extra person there to watch. It was Old Spooky. He got the nickname because, well, the man's getting old. He was there mainly to collect data because this was going to be one of the first times that a first generation enhanced mixed with a non human enhanced and had got enhancements. Boy, it's a lot of enhanced going on here. That being said, Larry was not exactly thrilled with him being there, as he knew it was the information that was needed to check and make sure that things went off okay, to make sure there was no future issues. But the fact that he had a spook sitting next to him made him question everything. You always have to question everything when they're around because they're never going to tell you the truth. Soon enough, John got similar enhancements with a slight boost to his physicality. An enhancement of strength, dexterity, skeletal structure to include the joints, tendons, and so on. It wasn't anything too crazy. It's not like he came out looking like a bodybuilder. But his very fit physique looked like he had been training for an additional 10 years nonstop. John's enhancement was 5 years after the Exodus mission. It took that long because, well, he takes a long time to finish growing, just like his father, who was considered a late bloomer back in the day. Within those 5 years, the other species, those that had kicked out the enhanced, had brought in prosperity to themselves. Still not happy about the quote unquote freaks that they weren't able to kill, living beyond their borders. The stolen land, money, resources had helped the economy and raised it up to unprecedented levels very, very quickly, just as predicted, just as history has shown. However, now money's running out, just as they predicted and just as history had shown. The quality of life was not running high for most of the population as it used to. Now they wanted to reason why. And just as history has shown, those in charge needed scapegoats. And who better than those that are not around, those who are clearly different in some way? They simply pointed at the enhanced. For the next 7 years, propaganda campaigns began. Most of them false claims that were easily debunked, but no one cared. Of course, they would say they found the occasional enhanced personnel who is robbing you of your new lifestyles. Anybody who saw the images, though, would look at them and say, damn, that was a bad makeup job. That's not enhanced. What the hell are they talking about? There was also a massive military buildup. It is not as though they are rebuilding from the wars they had fought. No, this was beyond what they needed. Large fleets had been built, and with that, large-scale war games were being completed. All the different species were wargaming against each other, trying to figure out their strengths and their weaknesses, trying to figure out new ways to wage war. As they did, they sent probes and recon flights close to human areas and close to Vunshin space as well. This was making the Vunshin very, very nervous. They decided they would plus up their own borders to make sure that any invasion across their territory would be met with swift resistance. Though they might not be able to actually hold back a full-on invasion, they would definitely tear them a new bunghole and make sure that any victory they had would be completely soured. Old Spooky would show up, the man getting very old at this point, would talk with all the enhanced humans in the planet just to let them know what was going on. Larry and Vince began to wonder if their families would be safe. And because of that, as soon as they looked over receiving the news of the buildup, they saw their families playing. They looked at each other and they knew it's time to prepare. Preparations, of course, are basic, and then you can work up to grandiose. First, it's stocking up the essentials: water, food, hygiene items, medical supplies, that sort of thing, which wasn't difficult considering where they were: close proximity to human territory, close proximity to Vunchan territory, so they could trade for what they needed. They lived on a farm and they had access to water, so most everything was taken care of on that one very quickly. Along with that, they needed to move up to the next level, which was protection. And with that, they needed weapons and armor. Along with that, living arrangements, i.e., bunkers, had to be made. And beyond that, things get even more interesting, as in very interesting, as they would have to contact Earth for the rest. Larry didn't hide anything from his wife or his kids. He tried to spare the youngest ones the worst of it all, but he needed to let them know what may be on their doorstep soon enough. So when they weren't working, they were training. This was simple because the kids had already mastered their basics. Hell, they've been training on the basics since each of them was 4 years old. Larry made sure of this, as he's just an old grunt that just wants to make sure his kids are ready. He used to tell them the old line all the time to the point where they got sick of it. You need to know as much as possible because you might need to know one thing one time in your entire life, but it'll save your life. Though they had to actually prepare, the twins, the oldest twins, didn't fully understand why. Why were their parents going so overboard on this? They didn't understand, not fully. They knew they had to protect their own planet, but why were they making such grandiose things happen? They believed that their parents were just going way overboard. That was until John got married a year after his enhancement. They had not quite timed it, but it was close enough that his wife started going through her heat cycle at that point. And we all know what happens with a forced when that happens. Yeah, don't even bother knocking if the whole house is rocking. And because of that, of course she got pregnant. It was the moment that he looked into the eyes of his first children. He looked at his wife too, holding his new twins, and he fully understood. He understood at that moment why his parents care so much, why they always go overboard. Seeing this, Larry and Vince almost telepathically could tell each other they understood that the son already knew what was going on, why he had to do what he had to do, because he's a man now, he's got responsibilities. Though looking at the twins, it's kind of hard not to do the old running joke that Force refused to have only one child at a time, because they're greedy that way. The news even reaches Old Spooky. He showed up just to congratulate the new parents, though while doing so, he kinda met the great grandparents, who really, really didn't like him. The great grandfather looked at him. He smells like deceit. This made Spooky very, very nervous, as there's no way an old man's going to take down a full-size, enhanced, and pissed-off Forged in hand-to-hand combat. That's not going to happen. So he made his visit rather short. Throughout this time, the war drums were pounding. One could hope that they would eventually fade away with time, as people would just calm down. Unfortunately, this is what history was going to tell them. Unfortunately, the war drums just kept getting louder and louder. Larry and Vince have lived through these enough times to know what's going on. They know what's coming. They know their history. They know exactly what's going to happen. And as they sit there one night, beer in a hand, they look up at the stars and they say, "Man, I can feel it, man. Yep, I can feel it coming in the air tonight."